I say it every year when we get here, and I definitely feel it. Last night, I'm sitting in this office. I'm watching Bears tape, getting ready for this, and it just kept hitting me over and over and over again. This is the best football weekend of the year. This is the best football weekend of the year. And we have 4 fantastic games that we're going to be digging into today for divisional weekend, which is my favorite 2-day stretch of the NFL calendar.
And such a new looking divisional weekend too. Like with the exception of Josh Allen being here, and I guess you could throw in Matthew Stafford as well. Just so many fresh faces, so many new guys to look at. Ironically, I can hear Houston fans reminding me that the Texans have been here the last couple of years as well. But the whole vibe of this weekend feels new and different to me, at least, than it has over the last 4 or 5 years.
And even though the Texans are mild underdogs this weekend, I still think they come into divisional weekend with different aspirations for the end of their season. Like, even if you had faith in what the Texans defense was over the last couple of years, this is the first time I feel like the Texans defense is good enough, Derrik, for them to win the Super Bowl because of the Texans defense.
They are like the epitome of what we talked about, this being like a weird season where there are different paths to winning, where I think even as recently as like halfway through this season, we were like, no, you got to bet on the quarterbacks. Like even when we did our like whittling down the table at the end, we were like, no, we're still picking the quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, their teams are going to be fine. We're at a point now where it's like, is the Texans defense the best single unit left? Like, to me, it's probably them or the Seahawks defense, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think those are the 2 best single units left. I mean, the Rams offense was the best offense in the league, but I think they've shown more vulnerabilities in the back half of the year than either the Texans or the Seahawks defense has. So I think that's right. And we talked about it on that Cutting Down the Table show, this idea that if you look back at the Final Four for the last 10 years, I think there was one team in the Final Four that did not finish top 10 in EPA per play on offense, and it was the 2015 Broncos. If the Texans win this game, they will be one of those teams. Like, they will be a historical outlier in the Final Four if they win this game. And like Derrik said, I think that speaks to what kind of season we've been dealing with here.
Giving new hope to all future teams that start 0-3 can point to the 2025 Texans as a reason to not lose faith.
Yeah, just have the best defense in like a handful of years.
Piece of cake.
All of these games are presented by BetMGM. We're just going in chronological order with all 4 of these. Kicking things off with Bills at Broncos. Broncos are 1-point favorites at home. This game is like, it's annoying you. You have anxiety over this game.
So we were just talking about this before we started recording. Like, the way you prep for these shows, you try to allot a certain amount of hours per game to rewatch some games, watch some film, look at some stats, and just really take a deep dive. And yesterday, I looked up at the clock on my laptop, and I had spent like 4 or 5 hours in a Broncos Bills wormhole. And I was like, holy shit, I've got to move on to something else. Like, I have been trying to get to the bottom of this game for so long that I'm like behind schedule, and it gives me anxiety. It's a deeply annoying game for me. It's the best quarterback left in the field against the 1 seed, a team that has won 14 games, has one of the best defenses in the NFL. The Broncos are 7th in total DVOA for this season, but a weird team. I think that's completely fair to say. The Denver Broncos are the 2025 Denver Broncos are one of just 4 teams I could find in the Super Bowl era to lose 3 games or less and have a point differential of less than 100. So this is a very complete team, but a very flawed 14-win team, in my opinion. And then a Bills team that has Josh Allen and it definitely has things going for it, but is a beat to shit, flawed roster in its own right. And I don't know, trying to have a definitive opinion about who wins this game, I think is a fool's errand.
The Broncos won 14 games. They're playing a very flawed Bills team, and it's a coin flip game at home. They're 1-point favorites. I think that says a lot with the 6th seed going to play the number 1 seed. So I think that speaks to the dynamics around this game. There's another game we're going to talk about that was the version of it, what you just said about just the complete lack of an ability to find a handle on it. There's one of those waiting for us a little bit later. That was my version of that. I think I have a better handle on this game for a few different reasons. One, we saw it happen in the playoffs last year, and so I think it's easier for me to understand what the Bills' path forward might be on offense, even if the Broncos' defense is slightly different. Like, I can picture the way that the Bills would need to win this game in a way that's a little bit more difficult for me a little bit later on with one of the games that we're going to talk about. And I do think that the Broncos' specific vulnerabilities on defense this year, we've seen it creep up enough times where I'm like, okay, that seems like something consistent that you can tap into. And so for me, Derrik, this is a game where I have a clearer picture of it than maybe a couple of the other games we're going to dig into today.
I kind of think so too. Like I also think there's a part of it where like even if you're a little bit uneasy about like, okay, this is a very flawed Bills offense going against a Broncos defense that has mostly been pretty good, had a couple of stumbles at the back end of the year. You can also still like very easily picture a game where Josh Allen just kind of goes nuclear, even with a lot of the issues that they've had.
Yes.
I do think what makes this game a lot different than the last game that they played in the playoffs last year. Last year, the Broncos got ran all over by the Bills. Like the Bills ran the ball incredibly well. A lot of that was them putting 6 offensive linemen on the field. And they have only really done that like a dozen times this entire season. That's mostly because they now have Jaxon Hawes who can do a lot of that stuff. Because really, if you're going 6 offensive linemen, you're just saying like, we don't have anyone else who can block, so we're just going to go put this guy out there. Now they have Hawes who can do that. And so it's still a lot of the same concepts, but I do actually think the Bills being a little lighter actually does work a little bit more in the Broncos' favor. Personnel-wise, the Broncos are also just way better than they were in that game. Like the linebackers in that game were Cody Barton and Justin Sternad. This year, it's going to be Alex Singleton and Dre Greenlaw. I think even if Greenlaw's not 100%, I think that is a pretty huge get for them. And then the down safety in that game was PJ Locke, who's like a fine rotational backup safety. Now it's Talanoa Hufanga, who is 1 an All-Pro and 2 like just wants to hit and kill people. I actually do think the Broncos are a lot more equipped to handle their run game in this game.
Did you see the quote from Hufanga this week where he was like, yeah, last year like lingers in our mind and we've got a chip on our shoulder. I know I wasn't here for it, but like I want to be part of the get back. I was like, all right,
I love
go,
him,
man.
It seems like a man who's looking for any slight he can possibly find at all times. I do think it's funny that if you looked at the Greenlaw and Hufanga moves, you could probably tie those to the way that the Broncos season ended, and now they're playing against the team that ended their season last year. I do think there's something beautiful about that. Before we get into the individual sides of the ball in this game, you mentioned that the Bills are just beat to shit, and just hitting that specifically, it looks like Ed Oliver might be back in this game, which is obviously huge. Terrell Bernard is going to be back potentially, but looks like Jordan Poyer is not going to play in this game. Tyrell Shavers and Gabe Davis tore their ACLs last week, so the Bills are down to 3 healthy receivers. If Curtis Samuel plays, that gives them 4, but he hasn't played for half the season at this point, and Maxwell Hairston is hurt. And so the Bills are pretty beat up heading into this game, which I think that is something to consider when you think about how this thing might go.
Doesn't it kind of say it all that Curtis Samuel, I believe he was a full participant on Thursday, as well as Damar Hamlin. And that news was celebrated by Bills fans like this huge development. And I was like, you know, you're beat to shit if this is getting you excited. If Curtis Samuel being part of this makes you feel relieved, which it should, based on the injuries that they've had to deal with.
It was a strange experience because going back and watching the game this morning, I was like, oh man, I forgot that Damar Hamlin was the starter for the Bills at safety. And it's like, oh man, Damar Hamlin might have to start at safety for the Bills again, because I'm not sure they want Jordan Hancock in that spot after the way that things looked last week when he had to play. All right, let's dig into when the Bills have the ball in this game. Derrik, you touched on it a little bit, but I feel like the Bills had a very specific approach last year. They had 16 plays where they went jumbo, according to Next Gen, against the Broncos defense. They ran the ball efficiently. This version of the Bills against this version of the Broncos, what is the first thing you're looking for on that side of the ball?
The run game wise, they probably will try to do a lot of the same stuff, right? Like in terms of the run concepts they were getting to, a lot of the weak zone, a lot of the duo, like they can run that exactly out of their 12 and 13 personnel stuff the same way they did out of their 6 offensive linemen stuff. So whether or not the edges can hold up, and honestly, the linebackers coming up and hitting and really forcing those plays to cut early, I think that was actually what Jacksonville did really, really well. And so I think I'm going to be looking at that. And then the other part of it to me in the passing game, we've talked a lot this year about how Denver's defense, there's more to it than you think. Like, I think we imagine them of just like, oh, they're sending 5 and playing man coverage all the time. And that's still like kind of what they major in, but it's a lot more zone. I think they bring more like simulateds and weird stuff than you think that they do. But I think this is a game where it's like, go back to your roots. let's just rush 5 and 6. Let's ask them to play man, because I know the Bills passing game can beat you in other ways, like with Kincaid. Maybe they hit, some of their guys out of the backfield. But if on the 13, 14 times they have to throw to wide receivers, we're just manning them up and beating them. I think that's how you, as the Broncos, kind of choke this game out.
That's exactly what I said. And I think it's good on your part, Derrik, and you've pointed this out a few times this year to say the Broncos do more than what is ascribed to them. Like, they don't just play man and do cover one and all that type of like high leverage stuff. But this is a game where you probably can.
Yeah.
This is a game where it would make sense if you want to crowd the box and just single them up. I mean, the Bills lost 3 receivers to season-ending injuries over the last 2 weeks. And this receiver core has been a source of consternation for them all season long. I mean, I would like to think you can man up what they have available, whether it's Curtis Samuel, whether it's Keon Coleman, and just force them to do things the hard way and trust that you're going to win those matchups far more often than you don't. This feels like a week where the stereotypical Broncos game plan would work very nicely.
The Broncos played about half man coverage last year when these two teams played, and the Bills picked on them a little bit in the playoff game. The Bills' receiving core is not as good as it was last year, which is crazy because we were hemming and hawing about how bad it was by the end of last year. That's how depleted they are. And if you look at this year specifically, the Bills are just a tick above average in almost any metric you want to look at against teams that play man coverage against them. They're top 5 in success rate, EPA per dropback when teams play zone coverage against them. Like, they just don't have the horses if you can really challenge them in that way. And obviously the Broncos are equipped to challenge them. And so I'm 100% with Derrik. Like, I think this is one of those games where you play a lot of man if you're the Broncos and you dare those guys to beat you. The run game part of it specifically, Derrik and I are on the same page. Like, if you look at what the Bills did last year to the Broncos and how they ran the ball, it's the same stuff the Bills want to do now, and it's probably the same way I would attack the Broncos on a couple different fronts. Like, they just tried to cave in or cave out those edges. You're just trying to move those guys in the same way we saw them do against Jacksonville last week. And even if it's Jackson Hawes instead of Alexander, those guys are still small, right? Like, those are still undersized edges if you can kind of get some push in that space. And then the other part of it is you watch the huge Josh Jacobs run that happened in the Broncos game or in the Packers game. That's just straight downhill duo. And the Broncos, you can get them a little bit doing that exact kind of stuff. And that's what the Bills want to be. And so who the Bills want to be in the run game, I actually think, even if the Broncos run defense is excellent, those are the specific areas I would try to run the ball against this team.
And actually, to that point about double teams, I actually think that the specific guy you can pick on there, to me, is Zach Allen. I think Zach Allen is great in a lot of ways, but his body type is actually really poorly set up for him to handle double teams. He's kind of has a thinner, smaller, like lower body relative to how big and tall he is. And he's like a very top heavy guy. So if he gets off balance just a little bit, he gets moved pretty quickly. And so you actually see that in a lot of these games where they struggle to give up some of these interior runs. Like, yeah, you can just knock him off. So if they can get a double team with, Deion Dawkins and David Edwards, and they're just getting under him, like, that's a good way to just dig out like 8-10 yards pretty consistently.
One thing we've kept coming back to consistently this season for the Broncos is they can give up some explosive passes to tight ends. That has happened in a lot of the games where offenses have had some moments. It happened in the Giants game multiple different times. The Packers got a couple to Luke Musgrave. Brenton Strange had an explosive in the Jacksonville game. And that's another area where that's the only shot the Bills have based on the players that they have right now. Like, this feels to me like the sort of game where Dalton Kincaid needs 2 explosive catches. I was going back and watching the last playoff game, and in the first drive of that game, the Bills come out, 12 personnel, little YY look where both of the tight ends are in line next to each other on the same side. It's under center play action. Dawson Knox starts running a big crosser left to right and then bends it back outside. It's a 25-yard completion. And like Derrik pointed out, different personnel for the Broncos right now, but that's the sort of stuff where I think you need a couple of those in this game if you're going to have a shot.
A funny thing I looked up on True Media, which is probably a good thing for Denver, to be honest, but they have the worst success rate in the league on targets to tight ends. But I would imagine that's a lot of checkdowns and safety blanket throws.
Still, though.
But you can do it. And so to have really 2 guys in Knox and Kincaid who can be that for Josh, And then you just alluded to it, but the number is 17 explosives to tight ends this year. And it wasn't just Green Bay. And Jacksonville did it a few weeks ago. Washington, Zach Ertz, remember that? Remember how jarring that was? So you can hit them. So if those two guys can be the most consistent piece of your offense, and if Denver's willing to give it up, fine. But then also scheme them into 2 or 3 of those big type of plays. You mentioned the Brenton Strange explosive last week against the Bills, ironically, where I think he was like a lead blocker in the backfield, and they like schemed him through the line of scrimmage.
That's exactly what happened against the Broncos.
Yeah. And the Broncos as well. And then we talked about it before the show. The Chiefs against the Chiefs, the Bills hit all 3 of their tight ends for an explosive in that game in various ways. It's that type of stuff I think you're going to want to come up with rather than trusting Brandon Cooks to beat Riley Moss or Patrick Surtain on any kind of consistent basis.
Top to bottom, the Bills' offense is outmanned against the Broncos and how good the Broncos' offense or defense has been this year. But I think there are specific things that the Bills can tap into, that they want to tap into, that give them a path in this game. And I think it's worth mentioning because too often when we do these sorts of previews, we don't say shit like this. Josh Allen is the best player in this game. The fact that Josh Allen is the best player in this game is worth mentioning.
You just sort of take that for granted after a while, but you're so right.
And this has been a great year for not overvaluing that. But then you look at what happened last week and it's just like, oh yeah, they have the best player. Like that does matter sometimes in a game like this.
It 100% matters, like especially too against the defense. I know we just like talked about a couple of ways that you can pick on the Broncos defense, but ultimately this is a defense that like the style that they play, you kind of just have to like flamethrower and out talent them in some ways. I'm not sure the rest of the Bills offense can do that. I know that Josh Allen can have like a half dozen moments if he needs to.
What is your confidence level, Derrik, that the Bills are able to tap into those things that we're talking about? Or do you think that because of where they're rolling out there right now and where the Broncos defense is, this is just one of those games where they get snuffed out?
I'm a little bit worried unless Josh Allen as an individual has like 5 or 6 truly incredible moments. I'm just not sure they're going to be able to get enough in the passing game. Like I won't be surprised if we get 2 or 3 of those chunks to Dawson, Knox, Dalton, Kincaid, whatever it is. Those still need to be supplemented by like a really good run game and finding a couple of downfields to Brandon Cooks or whoever it is. This Broncos secondary, even if they've been a little bit gettable at times, still a lot better than Jacksonville's secondary. And I think it's going to be harder for them to live that way the way that they did last week.
Do you think it's a non-starter that the Bills can impose their will? Like, does last week against Jacksonville linger too heavily in the mind?
I think impose their will is strong.
That would be impressive.
If the Bills' run game controlled this game, I would be surprised. If they were more successful this week than they were last week against the Jags, that wouldn't surprise me. And that's not because the Broncos are a worse run defense than Jacksonville. I just thought that it was a kind of shockingly bad performance by the Bills' run game last week.
I think they just need to like keep the heart rate steady. That's it. They just need to not get blown off the ball. They were for all but like 4 runs last week. Yeah, if they can just have like an average rushing day, not even average for them, because average for them is pretty damn good, but just like average in general, that might be enough to just like let Josh Allen have the moments that he needs.
Better than most teams perform against the Broncos. Like that's the bar that is worth clearing here.
One other thing I want to mention, because we talked about the receiver injuries, you would think that with all these injuries that the Bills might go back to the whole 21 and 22 thing. And remember, like we talked about that midway through the season, like Reggie Gilliam had that moment and it was something that we talked about a lot when we talked about the Bills. Don't get me wrong. The Bills they've always used a lot of 11 personnel this year, but over the last 3 games, they've ticked all the way up to 74% 11 personnel. Like they've just kind of gone away from that. I don't know if Denver's the team that you want to try to go back to that against, but it could be on the table considering the injuries you're dealing with.
I wonder if we just see more 12 because they don't have enough receivers to play that way. And they haven't played much 12 personnel this year. I think it's like 11% of snaps when I was looking at it on True Media this morning. But do they have to do something a little bit different just because of the cards that they're playing with right now? Let's talk about the other side of the ball. Derrik, the number one thing you're looking for when the Broncos have the ball against the Bills in this game?
So I think what's interesting is like everyone loved the game plan that Sean McDermott threw against the Jags. And I think that defense threw a heater. What I think is different about that game against the Jaguars compared to this game is the Jaguars' passing offense, their drop back passing game is like, we want as many people out in the outside of whenever they're doing their play action stuff. Like, they want people out in the progression. They want 4 and 5 out. They want Trevor Lawrence to like go through the entire field, all that stuff. When you are changing coverages and like doing weird stuff on the back end, you can catch the quarterback every now and then doing that. That's just like not how the Broncos passing game really operates to me. It's a lot more of like, we're taking our one-on-one shots outside of the numbers, like pre-snap, like kind of just like alerting that. It's a lot of RPOs. It's a lot of screens. It's a lot of underneath stuff. Like, it's just a much different consideration that I just don't really think a lot of that disguise stuff is as valuable in a game like this as it was last week.
I think that's totally fair. And when I went back and I was looking at the way the Broncos played this year and just what we've seen from the Bills secondary specifically, the thing I kept coming back to was the outside corners for the Bills need to be really, really good in this game. And I believe that they can be. Christian Benford's a really good player, and we've seen what Trey White has done recently. He's had a really nice season. And so I do feel like if we had said in week 4 that Trey White would be a divisional round starter for the Bills against the Broncos, I think you'd be a little bit worried about what Courtland Sutton could do to him in this game. But we're really not in that place considering how well he's played this season. But I think both of those guys need to play really well. And I expect Benford to be on Courtland Sutton a good majority of this game because I think he's played across the number one receiver on like 47% of snaps per next gen this season. So he has traveled like a decent amount. I expect him to do that again. They need to be really good in this game because I agree with Derrik and the numbers bear it out. The Broncos this season have 105 passes between the numbers that have traveled 5 or more air yards. 105. That is bottom 7 in the league. They are top 7 in the league in the number of throws, 5 or more air yards outside the numbers. And anecdotally, we understand that about the Broncos, but the numbers will tell you the same thing. Like, they want to attack outside and they want to get those one-on-ones, and how the Bills corners hold up in those one-on-one situations, I think goes a long way in figuring this out.
And how the Bills handle their potential injuries at safety as well. I'm ripping this off purely from our guy, Aaron Schatz, who does such great work, but I thought it was such an interesting stat. The Bills have the second best defensive DVOA in the league when they run too high, which is great, and it's a great way to try to keep that stuff from happening. But Jordan Poyer's dealing with a hamstring injury. Is that Damar Hamlin? Is it Jordan Hancock, who I thought had a couple nice moments in that game.
They picked on him.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
he had a couple nice moments moving toward the line of scrimmage. Yeah. Everything else was a bit dicier. So depending on what that looks like, you might be able to take advantage of that more than the numbers would suggest for the year.
I also think with the safety injuries, it actually plays into Derrick's point that maybe you're less inclined to try to disguise as much when you don't have somebody like Poyer out there who is saying he's fluent in this system understates it, right? Like he helped create it and make it what it is.
Don't quote the deep magic to him. He was there when it was made.
The other area of this side of the ball that obviously we have to talk about, how well can the Broncos run the ball in this game? Because we saw it last week. Like, even if the Bills can funky shit up on the back end and can make things really hard on you, and their pass defense is built for these sorts of playoff moments, the run defense is eminently gettable. The Jags, when they ran the ball on the perimeter last week, they did what they wanted to. And to me, it's an area where could we get to a stalemate for the Bills defense, and how important would that be? RJ Harvey this season per next gen, second lowest explosive run rate in the league among running backs with at least 100 carries. And so if you can limit some of those explosive runs, if you're the Bills, I think that's a big deal.
I know I said that I was struggling to get a handle on this, but mainly because I don't know how that's going to go. Like, if you could tell me how the Broncos run the ball, I'll tell you who wins this game. I think it's the single most important component of this matchup.
I think that's fair. I don't think that's oversimplifying it.
There's enough cause to believe either side of it. Like, if you tell me that the Bills gunk this up and keep the Broncos from really doing what they want to, I can believe that. If you tell me that the Broncos have a nice day and it lets Bo Nix hit his layups and run the offense the way that he wants to, that's completely believable too. I think it's easily the biggest piece of this whole thing.
The over-under is 45.5, like 24-21. Like, that kind of feels right. Like, I feel like that's like the range that we're going to be playing in. And the other side that I think is, or the other specific element of the Bills defense against the Broncos offense that I think is worth considering. Derrik mentioned this. The Broncos are a team that throws the ball short of the sticks at a top 5 rate. They rely on a lot of yak. That's what they want to do. They want to throw screens. They want to check the ball down. They want to get the ball to guys in space. And there's this weird disconnect with the Bills where they allow explosive runs at one of the highest rates in the league. They were better in the second half of the year, but they were still like a bottom 10 team. The Bills allowed fewer yards after catch this season per next gen than any defense since 2017. And so they've been really good at limiting those run after catch opportunities that the Broncos want to have. And so where that comes out, I think will go a long way in determining this thing.
Another thing that ties into that, and I wish I had looked into this before the Jags game because it might have affected my opinion of that. The Bills have batted a pass in 16 of their 18 games. They have 20 total batted passes at the line of scrimmage.
They on Walker's tall.
And them and the Steelers, man, always getting hands on passes.
But like, I mean, you're right. But like, so many guys do it. Remember, like Bedford had that play against the Bengals. Mm-hmm. AJ Epenesa's gotten his hands on some footballs this year. Rousseau's done it plenty. And with the amount of stuff like that the Broncos like to do, I won't be surprised if or let's say if the Bills manage to get their hands on a couple footballs, it could swing things.
The last thing I'll say to like put a bow on the yak stuff and the run game stuff, I think the Broncos need both of those because they want this to be as few possessions as possible. Like, I know their defense is great, but you want to give Josh Allen as few bites at the apple as possible and only have to make 6 or 7 stops instead of 10. And so if they can like go on some of these longer drives, 9, 10 play, 11 drives, even if on some of them you're only getting 3, I think they kind of have to win that way.
The only other thing on that side of the ball I think is worth mentioning, Derrik, I think your point about not really needing to be as funky with the coverages does make sense. In this game, I still think simulated pressures, and not necessarily blitzing, because the Broncos haven't been bad when blitzed this year, but you go back and you watch the game last year and you just think about who Bo Nix is as a quarterback. If you're going to flash something in front of him, right? If you're going to bring a second-level defender and you're still going to get 7 back in coverage, and he sees that little bit of color, you can push him out of the pocket quicker than he wants to leave. And so I think them tapping into some of that, and again, that's not against type with who the Bills are. They're more than comfortable dropping those edges off and bringing some linebackers in order to press the pocket that way. And so even if maybe the disguise isn't as important, I think some creativity with the pass rush plan is an important part of this for the Bills.
I think that's a great point because like the disguising stuff on the back end, that's you're trying to bait a quarterback into making a mistake 15 yards down the field over the middle, which you just pointed out. Broncos aren't really doing that anyway. When you're bringing some of the simulateds and stuff, it's when they're trying to be quick replacing the blitz, trying to throw some of these RPOs, trying to throw some of these screens that you can get like some sort of free runner or just make him make a mistake. I think that's a great point.
Let's get to our next one here. The 49ers at the Seahawks. The Seahawks are 7-point favorites in this game. It is the only line that is more than 3.5 per BetMGM as we record this. It kind of feels right to me. Like when I went back and I started digging into this, I was like, yeah, it does feel like the Seahawks have kind of a significant upper hand as we get into it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't let the Eagles game completely color your opinion of the 49ers. Like, this is a team from a personnel perspective that just does not have a full deck of cards. So I will just say I will continue to ride for the 49ers in the sense that this is a division rivalry. It is the second time in 3 weeks that they will be playing each other. I think very highly of Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh. I think this will be, I'd be surprised if this is a walk for the Seahawks, or if it is, it would be the type of game where like it doesn't start to get out of control until the fourth quarter. But I even if I understand why the Seahawks are favored by a full touchdown, I don't think San Francisco will make it that easy on them.
I actually sort of took the other end of that. Which we'll talk about the Seahawks offense and what they might do. But in my mind, when I look at this game, Mike Macdonald getting an extra week of prep for a team that he's played twice and just played with how deep and talented this defense is. I love Kyle Shanahan. The Niners have a handful of good players. This just seems really difficult for me to build a case for how this offense is going to do
handful of
enough.
Good players is so patronizing. But I get
the Niners, but that handful was smaller than it used to be.
I was going to say, with what
sure.
they've got left, I mean, I don't know.
Trent Williams and Ricky Pearsall play. It's a bigger handful than you had a couple weeks ago. Just ignore the part where George Kittle's out for the year. Just don't mention that.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's going to be a walk. I don't. I think the last game wasn't. I mean, even if the Seahawks defense was dominant for most of that game, if the Niners score a touchdown on that drive where Purdy throws the interception on that throw to McCaffrey in the flat, it does become a game deep into the second half. And so I think my hardest time with this, and we can start with this side of the ball, Derrik, I just have a hard time figuring out what the path is for this Niners team without George Kittle to score more than 20 points against the Seahawks. Like, I feel like 17 would be a win based on where the Niners are right now, based on what the Seahawks defense is, and also just how equipped I think the Seahawks have shown they are to take away what the Niners want to do.
That's exactly where I'm at. And like, granted, 17, I guess, would have won them the last game. But again, that's the
point, right? It might in this game, but I think 17 is like where I sit with it.
I 100% agree, because I think it comes down to like a lot of different things. One, I just think I've talked about before when we talked about the Rams and the Seahawks. Matthew Stafford is, I think, uniquely equipped to beat the Seahawks defense, especially over the middle. They are the best defense at squeezing windows over the middle, making those 10 to 20-yard throws in between the numbers really, really difficult. That's what the Niners want to do, and I think Purdy typically is good at those, but against the Seahawks, because of how tight a lot of the windows are and how quickly they're squeezing those, you need a lot more velocity than I think Brock Purdy typically brings. And so I think some of those throws are going to be tough for him. We've talked about before, too, I think a lot of Brock Purdy's worst moments are as a passer are when you squeeze the space in front of him. We saw on the interception that he threw against the Eagles, where they crushed the pocket in front of him. He doesn't want to throw that drift route that's right there. He turns back to his left, and then there's more pressure in his face, and he kind of just freaks out and throws an interception anyway. So the Seahawks, with guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, Leonard Williams, like all their guys are pocket crushers. They are built to do that. And then the last element of it to me, the Niners could not, and really did not try not to run the ball at all in the last matchup. I think they only had 12 rushing plays, and hardly any of them worked. Now you don't have George Kittle, who, and I know you'll have Trent Williams back, so there's a little bit of a push and pull there, but that to me probably comes out in the wash, and I'm assuming the Seahawks defense is going to have a lot of answers once again.
What's my rebuttal? Fair. And I do think this would be very tough for the 49ers, but I go back to the availability of Trent Williams and the availability of Ricky Pearsall. I'm basing any optimism for San Francisco on the availability of those two players. I have a hard time imagining it going any other way without both of them playing.
If Pearsall doesn't play,
it's
really hard for me to imagine a world where they're explosive enough in the passing game where they can find even 4 or 5 of them over the course of the day to make this possible.
If you go back and watch the Week 18 game, it just felt like the Seahawks were a wood vice and they were just spinning it on the 49ers like every single snap. Like there was no room in the pocket, there was no room on the field. They didn't honor like any ability of the Niners to create space. Like they didn't honor any of it. And so I think you need both of those guys. Ironically, I want to shout out Austin Pleasance, who played left tackle in that game. I thought he played pretty well, all things considered. But having Trent Williams back, I think at least gives you a chance to help Colton McKivitz, because you talk about DeMarcus Lawrence, Derrik, he dominated that game, especially like in the early going before the Seahawks were able to build up a 2-possession lead. He blew so many plays up. So if you get Trent Williams back and Colton McKivitz can benefit from chips and slides and extra protections and things like that, maybe it keeps the pocket from getting crushed quite as badly as it did in that game. And then you need a guy like Pearsall who, you know, against the Seahawks, I think it would be tough regardless, but at least gives you somebody who can exploit space and open things up. Because I think, let's be honest, even if Pearsall plays, this game is going to be so dependent on Christian McCaffrey and hopefully Kyle Juszczyk as well, like taking short passes and doing things with them. But if you go back and watch that game, when those targets got out, there were 4 Seahawks on top of those guys immediately because they were in position to get there because they weren't honoring anything downfield. So
they squeezed the life out of that game.
It was unbelievable watching it back, like the boa constrictor of it all. And so, yeah, I mean, I can't imagine the Seahawks scoring more than 17 points, even maybe 20, even if things go really well for them and all these guys are healthy. But I do think that could give you a shot to get there if you have these guys who could buy Purdy more time and give this offense more of a vertical element than it had in the last game.
You just felt the pocket condensing and you felt the space condensing. And you just watch how limited the Niners passing game felt through the first 3 quarters of that game. Through 3 quarters per next gen, Purdy was averaging 3.1 air yards per attempt. He has one other game in the past 3 years that was under 5 air yards per attempt. Like, it just was a completely neutered version of the Niners passing game. And the one thing, and even in so the Seahawks played 71% split safety coverages on early downs. It was a lot of quarters and it was a lot of cover 6. And they're just packing the paint. The Niners do not want to throw the ball outside of the numbers. That's not where they want to attack people. If you look at it in the second half of the season, the Niners had 37 attempts outside the numbers beyond 10 air yards. That was bottom 7 in the NFL. In the second half of that game, that is the space that the Seahawks are giving you because that's where they know you don't want to attack them. And in the second half of that game, those are where some of those chunks started coming for the Niners. In the fourth quarter, they had that big sail route to Kittle. They hit another one that's like a little circus route to Juwan Jennings where he releases inside, bends it back outside into the whole shot. And then they had a deep comeback to Demarcus Robinson against man coverage on the opening drive of the second half. It was like a 3rd and 4. Those are the throws available to you. And those are the throws you're going to have to make in this game, in my opinion, if you're going to have a shot. And that's why the Pearsall thing just feels really, really important. Because if he wasn't playing, I just don't know where some of those chunks come from in a world where Kittle isn't in the game.
100%. Like, you could get 1 or 2 of those without Pearsall, right? But you probably need 5 or 6, and if he's not in the game, you're not going to get 5 or 6.
The other thing I would note, too, I noticed that on a few of those plays, I just think, and when I say trick it up, I'm not talking about trick plays like what they did against the Eagles with Juwan Jennings. I mean, that's cool if you've got that in the bag. This is a good week for it. But I just think McCaffrey and Juszczyk need to get their steps in this game. Like, they got to be motioning. They got to be moving all over the place. And I don't know if it's going to work. Like, this is a really well-coached defense, but anything you can do to create conflict and maybe confusion, if Nick Emmanwori's not sure if he needs to bump to the flat or worry about the guy in the corner or whatever, anything you can do to try to gain that edge, you should be doing. I don't know if it'll work, but I would be moving those 2 guys frequently and on as many snaps as possible.
It reminds me of the second half against the Eagles last week when you were manufacturing explosives with that sort of mindset. I think that is where Kyle Shanahan has to be as he approaches this game. The one other thing I want to mention on that side of the ball, the Niners, or the Seahawks for the second straight game against the Niners, they did it in week 1. And part of me thought, okay, is that an echo of how teams are playing against the Niners last year and are they going to go away from it? They played more man than they typically do. They played like 20% man on first down against the Niners in week 18. And so them using that as a little bit of a change up and them kind of saying, like, we're not afraid of you in these moments. We think we can do this. That's interesting. And then the other element of Seattle's defense that they've really been leaning into in the second half of the season, just because the personnel has changed, they played 78% dime on third down in week 18. That is the second highest in any game this season. They've done it at least 40% of third downs since week 11 because the guys in the secondary are back healthy. And so this was already probably the best defense in the NFL right there with the Texans for the first half of the season, the first 12 weeks. And now their personnel is better than it was over those first 12 weeks. And they have more different things they can tap into.
Well, and because, too, specifically for this game, if you're telling me the Seahawks defense was going to play more man than they usually do and be a little bit lighter than maybe they have at other parts in the season, the guy on the Niners offense I would be most terrified is George Kittle. But he's not going to be in this game. And so Seattle can probably continue to do all that stuff the way that they have over the back half of the year. So
if we think it's going to be a tough road for the Niners to put up a lot of points in this game, I don't necessarily think that means the Niners have no shot in this game. I think there still is a path for them to win this game. They just need an ugly day from the Seahawks offense. And the question becomes, how realistic is that?
And they just held them to 13 points 2 weeks ago. You take that every single time if you're the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know if you can duplicate it, but you just did it. So that's one place to start.
Do you think that performance last in week 18, Derrik, where the Seahawks did move the ball pretty efficiently and they shot themselves in the foot multiple times, do you feel like it's more likely that we see another sub 20-point performance from the Seahawks, or do you think the down-to-down efficiency speaks to them being better in this game than they were a few weeks ago?
I think that they will probably be better than they were in the game a couple of weeks ago. If only for like, that was one of the worst performances that they had all season as an offense. I just don't see them doing that twice, especially against, I know that the Niners played well in that game, and that they've had a couple of decent performances here with that game, and then obviously I think they actually played pretty well against the Eagles. This is still a team that is massively, massively outgunned talent-wise. And I actually think the secondary does have some guys, and so if they're going to really try to, like, make some tough one-on-ones in the passing game, I think that could happen. But I just think the front, even with Seattle's run game and offensive line not being great, I still think that they are outmanned, and it's more likely to me that they'll be able to at least get to like 21-24 in this game, which what we just talked about with the other side of the ball, that should be enough for you.
Feels like a week for Robert Saleh to go out on his shield. Did you know, actually, San Francisco's pressure rate in that game was 36.7%, which is their best day rushing the quarterback since Nick Bosa got hurt.
No Charles Cross in that game.
No Charles Cross in that game, which he was downgraded to limited this week, and Josh Jones is also dealing with an injury. We'll see how that goes for a playoff game. I'm sure Cross will try everything to be ready for this. But you're right. That's worth mentioning. Even still, I think you just try to play it aggressively as possible. Like, you know that you're outgunned. You know that you probably need some variance in this game. I would do anything to try to manufacture pressure, which they only blitzed Sam 7 times in that game. They forced 3 incompletions. They got a goal line sack, and they forced the turnover on downs on 4th and goal when they did it. I'd probably dial that up a little bit. Sam Darnold's turned the ball over 5 times in the last 5 games, and that doesn't include 2 other fumbles that the Seahawks managed to fall on. So dialing up the pressure and hoping to cause some chaos feels like a great way to start.
That feels like the right path for me. The Niners haven't played much man this year, but they've been above average. EPA per dropback, success rate, anything you want to look at when they have played man coverage, especially on 3rd down. The Seahawks have been decidedly below average in those same metrics against blitzes on 3rd down in the back half of the season. And so those exact moments from the last game where you can kind of create a little bit of variance, I would be challenging them. And I think the real downside to that is you have JSN against these corners, specifically like him on the left side against Renardo Green. And it's not, to me, the fear, Derrik, of like getting beat over the top. It's him just being able to work underneath if Green is going to be playing off of him in man coverage, and them just picking at that over and over and over again if you're going to be playing man throughout this game. That's probably the thing I'm most worried about. But that to me feels like the risk reward as you like look at that feels worth it to me if you're the Niners.
Couldn't agree more. Like JSN, he's probably going to get his no matter what. The Seahawks will probably hit 2 or 3 or 4 explosive passes almost no matter what. You need to call plays in a way where you can get yours as well, where you can get 2 or 3 sacks on Sam Darnold. You can force a tight window throw where he's a little bit crowded. Maybe it gets tipped up for an interception. You just need to do some of that stuff, because I know the Seahawks offense has been explosive for a lot of the year. It's obviously cooled down a little bit, but even when they were good, they were turning the ball over. Like, Sam Darnold was giving it up. They were still throwing interceptions, and I do think that you need to turn up the heat a little bit in a way that tries to get some of that stuff out of them.
The idea of getting them into some 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, and see if you can force the issue a little bit. The Seahawks ran the ball well if you look at like the total output in that game, but they were explosive, but they weren't that efficient down to down. They finished with a 38% rushing success rate, but they had 6 runs of 10+ yards. And if you look at it, this is mostly true. When they won on the edge, they won in the run game. That's what happened. When they could get the ball onto the perimeter, that's where a lot of those plays came from. And I wonder, because of that, how much does Bryce Huff play on early downs? Like, if the Niners can hold up on the perimeter, I do think that if they can limit that to maybe you give up 1 or 2 explosive runs and you still keep that down-to-down success rate down under 40-ish%, that to me feels like one of the building blocks for how you get there.
And how aggressive do they use the DBs in the run game? Because that was actually what they did really well last time, is they were firing guys off the edge. They were firing them through like the B gap at certain points, and they were kind of doing their best to supplement their edge players and help them out a little bit. And so when those guys made plays, when maybe Upton Stout was able to squeeze through and get into the backfield, or Jair Brown, whoever it was, could get into the backfield, they could make stops. If that guy either missed a tackle or a tight end got enough of them and they were able to spring it to the perimeter, that's when you got your big explosive plays. So I'm curious to see how aggressive they keep that.
Which the Niners missed 40% of their tackle attempts in that game. Easily their worst performance of the season, which watching them last week against the Eagles, that's crazy. And it was a completely different set of linebackers. Obviously they dealt with injuries in this game. So how they handle that and how well they do that as opposed to what they did last time could say a lot.
I think it's a tough path for the Niners to carve.
This is like threading a needle,
yes,
for sure.
If they do it, I think it's because it's an ugly game. I think that's the game the Niners have to win. The idea of the Niners winning this game like 31-27, that's really, really hard for me to picture.
I don't even know what that Seahawks defense giving up that many points would look like.
Have they given up that many points all year?
The Rams. That was like
that
was the only game.
And that's the thing. That's such a like, I can't imagine this 49ers team playing that way. Like that doesn't compute to me.
Even like a 24-21 Niners win or a 27-24 Niners win, that's just harder for me to imagine. I think the Niners can win this game if it's in the teens. But I feel like, and that puts a huge onus on their defense, but that's the version of the game that I feel like the Niners are most likely to win if it happens.
Both versions of this game were that game. 17-13 and 13-3. I mean, week one is pointless. There's no reason to talk about week one considering everything that's happened to the Niners since then. But both of these games have followed more defensive scripts.
Last thing about the Seahawks-Niners game, just because I think we should mention in some capacity, Fred Warner probably not going to play. He's on the practice field and has been there this week. And the fact that that's even happening, considering his foot was turned sideways, 2 months ago, is crazy. But it doesn't seem like he's going to be ready for this game specifically.
Yeah, that feels... They say maybe if they were to win this game, maybe he'd be available for the NFC Championship. But great for the vibes to have him back on the field. That was wild.
Let's get to the next one here. Texans at Patriots. So, Patriots are 3.5-point favorites in this game. The game I was talking about earlier, when I was bringing up the game I had zero feel for whatsoever, this is the one. I have no idea what this is going to look like.
It's kind of, it's fun because they're similar games, right? Like, I mean, the two of the best defenses in the league this year, two of the best quarterbacks in the league this year. Like, those are the selling points for both of these teams. Talking about Broncos, Bills, and Patriots, Texans.
Maybe, and again, I don't want to put too much stock in what happened in last year's playoffs, but because I've already seen the Bills win a game against the Broncos, and I've already seen what that path looks like, and I do think there are more specific things to point to, it's easier for me to imagine the game that the Bills offense needs against the Broncos defense for them to win. It's harder to do that with the Patriots offense against the Texans, but of course I know the Patriots offense has been incredibly good this year. It's just harder for me to picture what it looks like specifically in my mind. I can see the 6 to 8 plays the Bills need and the Bills get to win that game against the Broncos. With this one, Derrik, I just don't know what those plays are against the Texans defense.
I'm in the same boat, man, because I think the Patriots offense is good. They have not played an offense or a defense of this caliber, and the Chargers defense is good.
That, though. We keep saying that every single week.
I know,
like this.
But they played a good defense last week, and they were not very good last week.
That's right.
And this is a better defense, but also a much different defense. This is a defense that they're going to challenge you a little bit more. A lot of tight windows. The pass rush is obviously incredible, and so it really is like a hard game for me to get a handle on. The thing I do think too, if I had to figure out what is the toughest game for me to pick, it's maybe this one, maybe the last one we'll talk about, but it's one of these two. The last thing I want to say,
bless you.
I know this, I think, is a cool full circle moment in a way. You remember last year when Drake Maye did not start the season and then he finally came in against the Texans and everyone was like, bad idea. You can't start your rookie quarterback against the Texans. And he actually looked pretty good for a rookie. Obviously, they don't end up winning that game. And now he has to come back as the potential MVP and play against a better version of that Texans defense. I think story-wise, that's kind of fun.
And we wrote his obituary before that game, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. And then he played pretty solid.
After watching what happened to Jacoby Brissett in that offense, I was very scared for Drake Maye.
I have zero regrets. It just speaks to what a good player Drake Maye has become and was clearly capable of becoming even at the time.
I was looking at this game, and so you look at the Texans' just coverage splits overall. They don't play a lot of cover 2. They play like about an average level of cover 6. They play 56% combined cover 3, cover 4. That's what the Texans' defense has been this year. The Patriots' offense this season is number 1 in EPA per dropback against cover 3 and quarters. And so that's where I sit with this game. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, it's just so hard to figure out who actually has the upper hand in that matchup. And I tend to think that it is the Texans based on how they're playing right now. But Derrik, as you're considering that, Drake Maye, this offense against the Texans defense, like, what is the first thing that you're thinking about?
I honestly think that you really do have to challenge them down the field, because I think the thing with this Texans defense is they play in a way that should be volatile. Like, they do play a lot of like one-on-one matchup coverage, and you can sometimes attack them down the field. The problem with attacking them down the field is usually the quarterback can't hold on to the ball long enough for that to happen. Drake Maye, I do think, is willing to hold on to the ball, and he's very willing to lay the ball out down the field, especially deep outside the numbers. And when he's done that, he's been about as accurate as you can possibly be on a lot of those throws. And I do think that when we've seen some of these really tough games from the Texans, it's been these games where this stuff can be volatile, but they get 2, 3, 4 shots allowed down the field. Some of them can be blown coverages, like they're struggling to pass guys off in some of their deeper zone coverage against play action. Or sometimes, like, Kamari Lassiter is great, but he still is, like, ultimately a cornerback, too, that you can beat over the top a little bit. And so I would be curious to see if the Patriots, I really think you do have to challenge them down the field, and I think Maye's willing to do it and certainly capable of it. I think I'm more curious to see if the receivers are up to the challenge there.
This is where my brain drew me when I started looking at this. Obviously, we know the Texans don't blitz that much. It's like 22% of the time. And maybe you don't want to against Drake Maye anyway, because he leads the league in like everything versus the blitz this year. 15 touchdowns, no picks, 1,600 yards, top 5 in the league in EPA per dropback versus the blitz. So that took me to, if you just rush 4, which the Texans love to do and are very good at, and you get pressure, how will that look?
He's the best quarterback in like 8 years.
Thank you. Best success rate and best EPA per dropback in the league, as well as the 3rd highest yards per attempt when he's under pressure. So not just if you send 4 and the Pats deal with it, but if he's under pressure, he's that good. The one thing, and I think we talked about this on the award show, he's taken 34 sacks in those situations this year, but only half of those were for more than 3 yards. And we've mentioned that before. Like, he's really good at sacks not ruining Patriots drives, because a lot of them just aren't for that much yardage because of his athleticism. And so, and this is ironic because we're coming off of a game where the Chargers strip sacked him twice. But as long as you keep that from happening, then I think Drake Maye can overcome this, is what I'm trying to say. And I don't mean that to minimize what the Texans are capable of. I've watched them plenty, but I don't know, man. I think I trust Drake Maye's body of work.
Actually, really cool. I think that's such a great point about the sacks, that like the particular types of sacks that he takes, where it's a lot of like 3 yards and less. He doesn't bail from the back of the pocket. Like, if he feels pressure, he's stepping up. He's going to run through the A gap. He's going to do some of that stuff. And so that's how you get
Drake Maye's. Half of his sacks this year are him getting ankle tackled at the line of scrimmage by a guy who is in pursuit. Absolutely.
And again, you think about just risk reward. Him trying to move up and out of the pocket, the plays he can make as a passer, navigating the pocket, what he does as a scrambler, like, you'll take a few of those sacks because the reward's on the other end of it. He's doing things under pressure and when having to move off his spot that almost no quarterback in the league is doing right now.
100%. Like, if you're worried about him taking a sack that gets you into like 2nd and 12 on a 1st and 10, but then the next play he can just like slide up against pressure again and then hit a 20-yard hole shot, who gives a shit if he's taking a couple of these sacks?
The one thing that gives me pause, see how you like this, Louisiana State University might swing this game.
I'm shocked you went here.
Danielle Hunter versus Will Campbell is that's quite a matchup, and Will Campbell has had a fantastic rookie season. He has lived up to the billing. But this is the type of pass rusher and the type of pass rush that can expose the questions about him, like the athleticism, the length. When people were trying to pick Will Campbell apart, it was people like Danielle Hunter who have 34.25-inch arms and have 18 pass rush moves in their bag. That's what people were imagining when they said, Will Campbell, top 5 pick. I don't know. And Anderson as well. Obviously, they both play on both sides, but
Anderson's played 75% of his snaps on the defense's left side coming into the game last week.
Hunter's mainly been right, but he was left last week.
They flipped it last week. Yeah. So Anderson was at 75% last week. And so that was just kind of a interesting tweak for that game specifically. But yeah, that for the most part, Anderson has played on the left side.
Danielle Hunter, Will Campbell, like all the nice stuff I just said about Drake. If Will Campbell isn't either on his A game or getting some help, then that could send things sideways for sure.
And then the Kayshon Boutte part of it.
You're so right.
We talked about taking those deep shots and like where they might come from and challenging those guys. That's the guy that potentially will be doing it.
Go Tigers.
Few different things. Again, if I'm trying to figure out, what do those plays look like with the Texans? I think Derrik is right. I think you have to try to challenge them down the field. They've been worse. The Texans have out of those single high looks that they have been playing quarters this year. And the one play I'm thinking of, so I was trying to figure out which games to watch, like go back and like which teams had success against the Texans defense and where we could find some ideas. The only team, I believe, since week 2 that had a success rate above 41% throwing the ball against them was the Raiders per next gen
Smith,
stats.
baby.
The EPA models are different in different places. But the next-gen EPA model specifically, the Texans have not allowed a positive EPA per dropback since week 2.
To be that good and to struggle with the 2025 Raiders is so
week
silly.
2. And so the Raiders, the one big chunk that the Raiders hit in that game is just Jack Besh on like a huge crosser against single high that Geno just lays out. And that it takes a really nice throw. But what do we know about Drake Maye? Like Drake Maye can be accurate pushing the ball down the field. And so I think that idea of we need to try to take a few shots in this game, you get a PI against a team that can get a little bit grabby. I think that has to be part of it. Few more things that I came to while watching some of this stuff back. The Texans this year, they have been about average against play action designed rollouts. And the Steelers last week, they hit that big crosser to DK with Rodgers rolling back to the left. So that is an area where the Texans defense have been average, and average is a win. Like if they're average, they're worse than they are in most other areas. One other thing that this isn't necessarily surprising. The Texans defense this year per next gen is bottom 5 in success rate on outside runs. And you think about how hard they flow. And if you can, my first thought when I'm thinking about this is 2 distinct types of plays. The Patriots will do this. They'll be in 21 personnel or some sort of heavy look in an I formation, and they'll do that kind of reverse pitch out to Henderson to like against the norm, like the flow of the play, trying to get a couple chunks off of something like that. I expect at least one end around attempted in this game by the Patriots, and I think if they tried like some sort of funky trick play, that would not surprise me at all.
I don't think it surprises me. I think the run game point is a really good one, too, because if you're running at or near the edges, like Will Anderson Jr. is one of the best edge-setting defenders in the league. Danielle Hunter is like less like, put 2 hands in your chest and like defend the run, but he will just get under a tackle and blow up the play. You kind of have to just run all the way to the perimeter outside of them and just pray that you can get away from them. Or like you said, some of that pitch stuff.
You need to have the ends crash inside and then get the ball back on the perimeter. The one like explosive run that the Steelers had last week was that Kenneth Gainwell wineback run, where I think it was Hunter, or it might have been Anderson actually, crashes inside and then they wind it back to the left side all the way to the perimeter. Like those are the types of runs I'm thinking of. And then the one other thing that crept up a couple times when I was watching some of these games, and the Steelers hit one last week, the Texans this year have been, if you look at their play action numbers, anywhere between the numbers, negative 0.15 EPA per dropback against play action. Outside the numbers, it's 0.12 EPA per dropback, which is, if you look at the league as a whole, it's still not bad, but those plays specifically have been much more valuable to the offense than a lot of other stuff that you can try against the Texans. And they hit kind of Thielen on like a sail route last week where they bleed out coverage to that side. And then because the linebackers are filling up against the run, I mean, this is normal football, but like because the Texans kind of play with that downhill mentality, if you can get Alshire taking 1 or 2 steps and then you're throwing it back into that hook area where he's supposed to be, that's one spot where if you can hold up, can you get 1 or 2 of those? And we've seen the Patriots like doing that. Like the Patriots want to attack that area. They do it all the time. So those are like the 3 or 4 things that I had, but it took me like 2 hours of digging to figure out like what 4 or 5 specific things would I try to do against the Texans.
Drake Maye leads the league in yards, touchdowns, and EPA per dropback on throws of 10 plus yards and outside the numbers. So that gives credence to your point, which I can't. We said this in the production meeting, didn't we? Like of the 4 games, unit on unit matchups, this is top billing for me.
I think so. I mean, the Patriots were number 1 in EPA per dropback this season, and the Texans were number 1 in EPA per dropback on defense. Like, I think this is probably the biggest strength on strength matchup.
And I don't want to hear if the Patriots manage to win, I don't want to hear any more of this. Well, they haven't done it against so and so. Like this is it.
If you beat the best defense in the league, it's all over. Yeah.
I do think that it's hard for me to imagine a game where the Texans defense really gets picked on right now with the way that they're playing. The question then becomes, if the Texans defense can slow down this offense, can they do enough on the other side of the ball to win this game? And I just don't know if they can right now. Because if you look at what they did last week, I think there are a couple different things that come to mind. The way they ran the ball against the Steelers last week, that feels like an outlier. Right? Like they have not been able to run the ball downhill like that all season. Like their efficiency running the ball, just straight downhill runs out of those jumbo sets last week, they've been actively bad in that area for most of the year. And so is that an indication that things are trending in the right way? Or is that a performance that we just kind of throw out when you take it in context with everything else that's happened? And then now you lose Nico Collins. And so you lose your most explosive pass catcher, and you, for the most part, have struggled to run the ball this year. And Derrik, I think there are specific elements of who the Patriots have been defensively over the last couple months that do make it even harder on this specific version of the Texans.
As far as that run game against the Steelers, like throw it out is maybe strong, but you got to prove it to me again. You've been bad for basically the entire season. I think I said when that game was happening, when they were just like having a couple of those drives where they were just marching it on the Steelers front, I was like, I don't know if I've seen the Texans do that since the Jags game with Davis Mills, which was in like week 8. And that was when they first pulled out the 6 offensive lineman stuff, and I think it caught them off guard. So they've got to prove that again. And I do think personnel-wise, I struggled to see them doing that against the Patriots in this game for a couple of reasons. One, we've actually seen that Steelers run game have some pretty low lows, even though they've been decent at certain points this year. But to me, the trio of Milton Williams, Khyiris Tonga, and Christian Barmore is a better interior than the Steelers have, especially Tonga is really, really good right now. And so if he's going to be back in this game and he's going to be healthy, I think to me it's hard to see how they push them around. And then obviously in the passing game, one, I think you struggle to match up now one-on-one. Even if Christian Gonzalez is out on the other end, like if you don't have Nico Collins, I think the rest of the Patriots secondary is fine.
He's not out, by the way. Gonzalez practiced. He practiced in full.
It sounds like Gonzalez is going to play and Nico's not going to play.
Then that is like worst case scenario for this Texans passing game. Because I just, again, matchup wise, I don't see it. Like Jaden Higgins is a nice player. I think we like what he can be. But if he's got to go toe to toe with some of those other corners and he's got to be the guy for them, it's hard for me to imagine how this goes all that well for them.
I feel like I sound like a Patriots cheerleader in this segment, and I don't mean to, but like looking through it, I just came away with the conclusion. I think not on our show, but like just in general, people talk about the Patriots as if they are like a bad team that rolled over a bad schedule and Drake Maye's awesome, but it's not that good of a team. And I'm not saying that they're the best roster in the playoffs, but I think this is a better roster than it's gotten credit for a lot of the year, probably because they weren't regularly testing themselves against the best in the league. And now you look at this situation where Milton Williams is back. Khyiris Tonga's coming back. I looked this up. Tonga's been out since week 10. Milton got hurt shortly after that. So for roughly 8 weeks, you haven't had the two of those guys. The Patriots' defensive rushing success rate was 39% over the first 10 weeks of the season, which is decidedly solid. and it fell all the way to 47% over the last 8 weeks. You get those guys back. You have Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez. Robert Spillane comes back from an injury that he was dealing with as well. And then you have the likely MVP, or at least a contender for MVP at quarterback. Like, this is not a juggernaut of a team, but I think they are a much better team than the popular narrative suggests.
And I think, too, what I would say with the defense is actually that we've said this about a couple of different units and teams throughout the year. I think they were not that good in getting away with it for a lot of the first half of the year playing against some bad teams, some bad quarterbacks. I think over the last 6 weeks, they've actually done some really cool shit, especially up front. I think some of the pressures that they're bringing, who and where they're dropping guys from, how they're manipulating some of the pass rush plan. I thought the way that, obviously, the Chargers' offensive line is very gettable in terms of manipulating pass rush plans, but they really took it to the max in that game, and they've been doing that for a lot of the last month or so of the season. And so I think now that they've dialed in some of that stuff, and like you said, Dave, they've got a lot of their guys healthy, like Milton Williams, their best pass rusher, Spillane being back in there, that you can kind of use him as a hammerhead too in the passing game. It's not a perfect defense, but they've got some stuff, and they're throwing more pitches now.
If you look at it, the next gen numbers, I think they're a yard per carry better with Spillane on the field than with him off the field this year. And we know normal caveats about the noise with on-off splits, but I do think it's at least worth mentioning. I think some of what you're talking about is that they were starting to play with lighter boxes in the middle of the season. And so there are some structural reasons that I think teams are running the ball better. But the fact that now you have all of your best front seven players back in the mix is certainly helpful. I just think that a lot of the ways the Patriots want to play defense right now are set up to give the Texans problems with the way that they've played. Specifically, the Patriots will kind of play whatever they need to on the back end based on who the opponent is. Whatever you're not very good at, they're comfortable doing that. Against the Ravens and the Bills, they played a lot of man because the Ravens and the Bills weren't as good against man coverage. But they're happy sitting in a bunch of split safety coverages. They did it a lot against the Chargers last weekend. The Texans this year, per next gen, bottom 10 in passing success rate versus split safety coverages, 6th in passing success rate against single high coverages. And just think about it. You can imagine it. Just some of those crossers against single high and their ability to hit some of those inbreakers, that's what they want to do. And so if you're trying to clog the middle of the field and you're taking that away, I do think that the Patriots are going to have the right plan for who the Texans want to be. And Derrik mentioned this. The Patriots in the back half of the season, they've gotten more creative with the pass rush plan. 4 of their highest cover zero rates all year have come in the last 6 weeks. They've been up near 10% 3 different times since week 13, which is a lot. The Texans this year, per next gen stats, 31st in success rate versus cover zero. They lost more EPA on those plays than any team in the league. -1 EPA per dropback against cover zero, not 0.1. So the Texans lost a point of value every single time a team ran cover zero against them, and the Patriots have started to do that more and more as we've gotten deeper into the season.
And now you tell me they don't have Nico Collins. Yeah, that sounds like a recipe for trying to get wild with it and run some cover zero.
I think that the Texans defense is in a place where they can nuke any game they play in. I just think that figuring out how the Texans offense is going to score enough to win this game, it's tough for me. And that brings me to the first point I made. It's I don't know how to square this. I don't know where I land because of that.
Would you rather have an A+ and a D or 2 Bs? Because I'll take the 2 Bs.
Historically, my answer is 2 Bs.
If you want the A+, I get that. And I'm not trying to say the Texans can't win this game. This defense is ferocious, but I'll take my chances with 2 pretty good units, one of which has one of the best quarterbacks in the league this year, over a very imbalanced team at this point in time.
I think that's the right answer.
But
I'm not sure it's my answer.
You just don't want to be on the other side of this fun of a defense. And that's totally fine.
I think that might be it.
That's fine.
I honestly think that might be it. I'm willing to admit that.
That's in the same boat. I think so often my North Star for games that I really struggle with are just all right, what is the unit that I think is the best one? And I think it's the Texans defense. I think they might be the best unit left in the entire playoff field. And so
Seattle's defense, I think,
it's one of those two.
Gives them a run for their money.
It's one of those two, I think, that, pretty clearly to me. But we've talked about this a little bit too. I think because of the style of it, yes, I lean towards Houston, and I just there's something about it that is I think they could just go and win a game.
I was thinking about this earlier this week. Just again, we've made this comparison a bunch. And the Seahawks, by the way, the Seahawks are physical. They're fast. Like this is not some like finesse defense. Now, I say this with love. This is not the Bills defense where they're getting by with finesse. That's not what the Seahawks are. The Seahawks will come out and kick the shit out of you. But if I'm trying to land on like what is different about it, when you play the Seahawks, it feels like they have 12 guys. It feels like they have more players than you. When you play the Texans, they have 11 guys, but all of those guys are insane people. Like they're just absolute monsters, every single one of them.
The Seahawks have 12 players. The Texans have 11, but all 11 of them have a hammer.
Yeah, yes.
They all have a hammer and they all have jetpacks.
That is what it feels like. Two more stats I wanted to throw out that I think are worth noting. The Patriots have been slightly worse against man coverage this year than they have been against zone. And the Texans played, this is per next gen, 17.5% man over the first half of the year, 32% in the second half of the year. So they've really cranked up the amount of man coverage they played Houston in the second half of the season. Curious if they do that again. Maye did struggle relatively against the man looks that the Chargers threw at him last week, but that's enough of a change up for the Chargers where maybe you can jump on him a little bit. The Patriots are going to have a plan for what the Texans man stuff is going to look like in this game. And the other one that I think is worth throwing out, because again, if you're imagining the plays that the Texans offense can make, Houston this year, 6th highest rate of condensed sets in the NFL. Patriots are 4th in EPA per dropback against condensed sets this season. So you think about all of again, just those crossers from condensed sets, those inbreakers from condensed sets that the Texans want to run. The Patriots, for the most part, have been really good against those this year. Let's get to our last one here. The Los Angeles Rams at the Chicago Bears.
Can I jump in really quick? I am sorry, guys.
You sure can.
Let's rewind one game because we just got a little bit of information. Officially, Fred Warner not playing.
Okay.
So we got that. Sam Darnold has popped up on the injury report, questionable with an oblique injury that came from nowhere. So there you go. Charles Cross is playing for Seattle.
I think Sam Darnold's playing too.
I think he is too. Yeah. Just a heads up.
That's worth noting.
But injured Sam Darnold sounds prone to ugly football games.
So you're
Derrik
telling
me
to believe there's a chance.
Derrik is starting to believe. Rams at Bears. Rams are 3.5-point favorites in this game. Imagine if I told you on Halloween that the Bears would be playing a divisional round playoff game against the Rams, and the Rams would only be 3.5-point favorites.
And the game would be in Chicago.
Yes.
I wouldn't have believed you. I would have said, that's cute, Robert. Join me in reality.
Yeah, I think that being the case, you would have had to told me that. Actually, I don't even know. Like you would have had to told me
for the
that.
Rams?
Yes, you would have had to tell me that like Matthew Stafford went down and they just like lost more games than they should have or something like that. That's the only way I could see it.
I mean, they did lose more games than they should have, but it still does not prepare me for the Rams visiting in the divisional round.
This is a tough push and pull when I'm just thinking about like the emotional aspect of this game, because there's part of you, it's like, man, what a fun season. This has been incredible. You're playing with house money. If you lose this game to the Rams, it's like that isn't a perfectly acceptable way for your season to end. But once you get to the divisional round, that shit's out the window, man. Like there's none of that to be had.
I can tie this together with Chicago, actually, because I remember the 06 Saints came out of nowhere to reach the NFC title game, and it was the year after Katrina, and it was like the most feel-good season ever, and we were just happy to be there. You know what sucked? Getting walked down by the Bears in the NFC title game. Like, house money doesn't exist after a certain point, and when the end goal comes into view, which is divisional weekend, that's all bullshit. Like, you can tell yourself whatever you want, but every team left in the field is starting to believe or already fully believes.
Yeah, when you're down to the final 8, I think you have to get yourself there. And I unfortunately for me, I do think that I'm there.
Well, and also the way they won their last game. Like, you cannot win that game that way and be like, I guess the rest is just house money. Get the out of here. Like, we're going all the way.
I'm trying to protect myself here, and Derrik is just refusing to let it happen.
Because it's a lie.
You guys are 100% right.
It's a lie.
You guys are 100% right. I mean, last week, as soon as they won, I started talking myself into who I wanted to play, who I wanted to see win the next week. It's immediately when that game ends, you start getting yourself there. And unfortunately, I'm there. The fact that I am shouldn't surprise anybody. we're sitting here talking about this game before we record, and Derrik is starting to say some out-of-pocket shit about how likely he thinks it is for the Bears to win this game.
Listen, man, I there's a couple of factors like Matthew Stafford with the weather, the way this Bears offense matches up. Like I'm spinning myself into it pretty fast.
All right, let's start with that side of the ball, because if the Bears are going to win this game, I think it is going to be driven by the way that their offense plays. So what about this Bears offense against this Rams defense do you think gives the Bears a shot in this thing?
The Rams defense, down the field especially, is not very good. And I think at earlier parts in the season that was true, and they were just doing a good job of the run defense was so good, teams just weren't able to get them in passing downs, all that stuff. I actually do think over the last, actually funny enough, really since like the first Panthers game, like week 13, week 14, it's been clear that you can get this Rams secondary down the field, especially their corners. If you make their corners do anything but sit on top of routes and like drive on stuff that's under 10 yards and just like go try to pick balls off, they struggle. Like you can snap them off on some of these deep corner routes. If they try to go chase a dig, they're always a step slow. And then even if you're just size matching them up like one-on-one, you saw what the Panthers were able to do with Teteroa McMillan, Jalen Coker. They can just outsize guys like Emmanuel Forbes and Kobe Durant. I know the Bears receiving core isn't quite that, but like Rome Odunze has some of that to him. And then to me, really the guy, Colston Loveland, can basically be a wide receiver. And so if they split him out and match him up against some of those guys, like the way that this team is built and the way that the Bears want to attack, right? Like all they want to do is throw 15, 20, 25-yard chunks down the field. It just feels to me like they are built for a game like this to score 30 plus on this Rams defense.
It's funny because the Loveland stuff, he lines up as the number one receiver split out wide consistently within the offense. They're doing that in large part to get coverage tells, to kind of do things to teams formationally, not necessarily to create matchups for him against corners. In this game, it might actually be something worth thinking about.
Box him out.
Yeah, I want Colston Loveland on Emmanuel Forbes as many times as I can get it.
I do think, and I'm with you, I think that a lot of the things the Bears want to be offensively, that's the way that you want to attack the Rams. The first point I'll make, the run game just flat out. The Bears have had one of the best run games in the NFL this year. It was not good last week. That's because of the way the Packers were playing them. The Packers, per next gen, loaded the box, so more defenders than blockers, on 75% of the Bears' runs last week. That was the second highest mark in a game this season by any team.
That's some like one-off playoff bullshit.
Yes. And so I just don't expect, the Rams have 2 games this year where they were over 40%. The Packers were at 75 last week. That's not the way that the Packers want to play.
Not the way the Rams
That's not
play.
the way that the Rams want to play. They're playing with light boxes at a top 8 rate. I assume that they'll devote more resources to the run than they would against an average team, but I don't think it'll be that extreme. And I think the Bears run game will look better this week than it looked last week. That aside, the way the Bears want to throw the ball, like Derrik said, the Bears want to be ripping these digs off play action. That is what the baseline of the offense is. This year, the Rams are 29th in success rate allowed off play action per next gen. And here's the kicker. They are dead last against in-breakers off play action of any team in the league. And that's the entire Bears offense. And so I do think some of the in-breakers off play action, some of the crossers, and the Bears are really good at this, where I'll be curious what the Rams do against the 12 personnel the Bears want to use. Because the Rams play base to 60% of their 12 personnel snaps. If they do that, and you're the Bears are more than comfortable breaking out those 12 personnel looks where they'll create some horizontal stretch and running some big crossers to Burden, like out of those looks. They'll do things where they'll have Komet just going like some sort of exit motion, create that width horizontally, and then they'll have Burden come back on one of those crossers. You can see that against the Rams defense the way that it's currently built. And so there is a path there. There 100% is.
This sounds harsh because he was so good in the early going of the season and what deserved a contract extension, but Quentin Lake got picked on last week, and
First game back
in 7-8 weeks. Maybe he's better with a week to get his feet underneath him, but I would want to find that out if I was the Bears. Like, where's 37 and who's on him? Let's get the ball to that guy, because he gave up 8 for 94 on 11 targets, easily his worst day of the season. So Luther Burden, DJ Moore plays plenty in the slot. Like, I would be looking for that early and often.
Couple of run game numbers. Rams are dead last in stuff rate this year defensively. They just do not create a lot of negative plays in the run game, which that's a lot of the get out of here with the weird run game bullshit in this game. If I see a reverse pivot handoff to a wide receiver that goes for -5 yards in this game, I'm going to lose my mind. Because if you just line up and run the ball, I do think that there will be enough down-to-down consistency for you to feel good about it.
You know who your coach is, right?
I really do know who the coach is.
Okay,
I really
sure.
do. So those are the things I'm like really looking for on that side of the ball. The thing that is, and again, the Rams still have a good defense. They still have a good run defense. And so while I think the Bears run game will be better, I don't think this is a situation where the Bears aren't necessarily going to run all over them. And if you get into some of these 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8s, there are two things that have left me in like a cold sweat. Jared Verse against the backup left tackle is going to make me lose sleep over the next 3 days. Like that is something that is absolutely worth worrying about. And the Bears, in some of those looks, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, especially if teams are going to mug it up a little bit, they do run a lot of screens in those situations in order to limit the downside. The Rams have been the best screen defending team in the NFL this year, 20% success rate against screens. And so if they can be stout against the run and you're forcing the Bears into those pass first situations, I do think that's where things maybe start to unravel a little bit if you're Chicago.
Do you have a preference of Theo Benedette or Braxton Jones?
I think it's probably Benedette just because he's been playing. Like the idea that Braxton Jones is coming in cold, that would concern me.
Jared Verse has 22 pressures, 2 sacks, 3 quarterback hits over the last month. And that's not to mention what he did on special teams in that Falcons game.
Jared Verse, who is one of my favorite players in the NFL, being the person who nukes this Bears season would be, it's not the way I want to go out.
A small note I'll actually say on the pass rush too, the Rams' edges, because they're long and strong, keeping Caleb in the pocket actually probably is the better way to rush the passer here, as opposed to like giving him some of those, you try to bend the edge too fast and he just wheels out the back the way that he usually can.
I just like spit out everything that I thought about this game. Anything else on this side of the ball that you guys feel like is worth mentioning, or is it front of mind for you?
It ties into what Derrik said at the top, but since that loss to the Panthers, the Rams have allowed the second most explosive pass plays in the league, 46 over the last, whatever that is, 5, 6, 7 weeks of the season. Their explosive play rate has ballooned up to almost 18%, which is a bottom 10 number in the league. You can get them. And I like the Bears between just the way the passing game functions on its own, Caleb's ability to extend plays, and the skill talent, like there should be explosive plays for the Bears in this game as long as the weather semi-cooperates.
And to the point about extending, actually, the team that's gotten a ton of the explosives against the Rams secondary has been the Panthers, and I think the Bears can do a lot of what the Panthers have been doing. The one thing the Panthers couldn't do successfully was boots, just because anytime Bryce Young got out, like once he started to wheel around, whoever was chasing him was just a better athlete than him and could hunt him down. That's not the case with Caleb Williams. Like Caleb Williams is a pretty special boot player. He can probably get a couple of explosives, maybe take 1 or 2 of those as a carry and pick up some yards. So I just, again, almost no matter how you look at it, I just feel like the Bears offense is designed and equipped to put up a lot of points on the Rams here.
I certainly hope so. I think it's worth mentioning, because it's so extreme that it absolutely might affect the game. It's going to be really cold. And so there is a chance that just the quality of the offenses is diminished in this game because of what the conditions look like. Last point on this side of the ball. I went back and watched the Lions game. I just felt like that might have been the best. All right, what did the Rams do against the Lions offense? Just because there's some shared schematic DNA. Goff hit 2 just like posts against quarters. Like foot in the ground. My guy has the leverage. I'm letting this thing go. Can you get one of those in this game? Can we get like 1 deep post touchdown against early down quarters, which the Rams have played more of in the second half of the season than they did in the first half of the season? That's not been Caleb's strength. Like really letting those, he's been very good pushing the ball down the field, but those sorts of like the safety's taken 1 step down. I see that this ball's coming out right now. That's not necessarily who he is, but I do think that an opportunity for a play like that might be there against this team.
If there's any time for them to pull that out and for him to take what does feel like a next developmental step for him, this would certainly be the game.
Why that's important is I think the Rams are also probably going to score a lot of points in this game, unfortunately.
Could be the most entertaining game of the weekend. I mean, I don't want to say that because like all these games are great in their own right. Let me rephrase. Highest scoring game of the weekend. The only thing that gives me pause is the fact that it's going to be like 5 degrees.
I think the over-under is like 55, or excuse me, 50. The over-under is like 50. It was like 50 to 51.5, even with it being like 5 degrees outside. And so I do feel like the offenses are set up for success. Derrik, I just have a hard time imagining like what the Bears' best plan is on that side of the ball if they're going to slow Stafford down.
I think I come down with a couple of I think it's very difficult. I will say, if we're talking about the weather, I feel like that does hurt Los Angeles more than it hurts the Bears. Because I just think if both of these teams can run well, I think the Bears are more equipped to get more explosives. And so if that's going to be part of the game, I think that hurts them. I also think Caleb Williams just being a better, younger athlete, like that probably helps them as well. Whereas I think we've seen like he is like at Stafford. I think
Stafford? This is the comment of a 28-year-old man who's like, man, he's 37. He might as well be dead.
I don't know, man. Him move. He kind of looks like.
Did you see Stafford try to scramble against the Panthers last week?
Or honestly, last year Stafford threw the ball really well against the Eagles. A couple of those moments where he maybe could have moved in the pocket or got knocked off his spot because it was, I think, a little bit cold and snowing. Those moments, I think, did hurt them in that game. We'll see how it shows up in this one. Obviously, that Eagles defense was miles better than that.
I was about to say, you think the Bears defensive line is going to be pushing him off his spot in this game?
Well, that does lead me to my next point. If I'm the Bears, I'm throwing the kitchen sink at Matthew Stafford. I'm throwing everything, and I know that he does. I know that he does really well to replace it. They're going to get some explosive plays no matter what. I think if you're going to win this game, you have to get 4 or 5 really uncomfortable moments from Matthew Stafford in the pocket. I just don't know if you do that if you're rushing 4.
I think that early down blitzing can be part of the plan. And when they've thrown the ball, by the way, the Rams, on early downs when teams have blitzed them, they have torched teams. 0.35 EPA per dropback against the blitz on early downs, 57% success rate. I think one of the reasons you maybe live with the volatility there is the reason the Bears were able to start slowing down the Packers' run game in this second half of that game is that they were sending a lot of run blitzes. It's guys coming off the edge. It's Brisker. It's Gordon. You can crash the defensive ends inside because of that. And so if you can start creating some neutral or negative runs on first down, if it's 2nd and 10, I think that's when it's worth doing. I don't want to be vacating space on 3rd down against this team. I think that's where it gets scary. If he's sitting back in the gun and you got a guy coming from the second level, that to me is where he can start to pick you apart. But if you want to blitz on early downs as part of your run defense plan, that to me is probably where I would try to tap into that stuff.
What do you want them to do then?
I don't know.
What?
I really don't know. I really don't know. Because like, what are you thinking like zone blitzes where you're like, because this team is a terrible man coverage team, like a terrible man coverage team. You saw that happen last week. And so if you're going to play man against this team in blitz, I just feel like you're setting yourself up to get barbecued.
You probably are, but I almost think it's we've talked about this a little bit before with the Bears. Like it is a damned if you do, damned if you don't defense. Maybe this is me just like personal preference. I'm going down swinging, man. Like we're going to throw some stuff at you and we're going to hope that we can get 1 or 2 explosives back.
I hate to call it a pivot because the Rams have been good at running the football all year. But when you think about the Rams, it's so easy to fixate on the receivers and Stafford slinging the ball the way that he does. Given the conditions and given what you might be able to do you think the Rams could play a more buttoned up possession style of football in this game? Because that's when I heard that Kevin Dawson is probably coming back for this game, I started wondering, like, do the Rams just try to steamroll this game and just take the air out of the football and hold the football for as long as they possibly can?
They can. Yeah, I think they absolutely can. There's a world where they're just running for 5, 6, 7, 5, 7, 6. Like that version of the game is not hard for me to imagine whatsoever.
4 games since Kevin Dawson got his foot stepped on in the Seattle game, the Rams' rushing success rate has dipped 9 points from their season-long total. Like, I think it makes a huge difference. They didn't manage a single explosive run in the last 2 games. The only other time that's happened this year where they didn't have a single explosive run was when they played the Texans in week 1. So I think they're going to try to make a concerted effort to get the run game going. The Bears' explosive run rate is 4th worst in the NFL. Like, not that obviously Puka and Devontae Adams are going to touch the ball in this game, but I wonder if this is going to be a more smash mouth style of football. Because ironically, I think the popular talking point is that the Hollywood team that plays in the glitzy stadium in LA doesn't know how to do that, but I bet they'll try at Soldier Field.
I think they're well equipped to play that way.
I think so too.
Like I feel like that's the team they've been all year. I think one of the reasons this game could be lower scoring is if we don't have as many possessions because both teams are just stringing drives together. Like that wouldn't necessarily surprise me. The last element on that side of the ball that I think is worth bringing up, the Rams this year, I feel like obviously, like the Panthers beating them and then giving them a closer game than we might expect, it would be simple to say, like, we'll just do some of the stuff the Panthers were doing. We mentioned this last week heading into the game. The Panthers are the best team in the league this year at defending under center play action passes. And so that element of what the Panthers were doing to them specifically, I do think is worth trying to tap into. And what the Panthers did a great job of is the flat defenders on that defense are just getting so much depth that you are making them try to throw the ball underneath. And if they're not, can you get 1 or 2? And that, to me, it feels like a necessary component of this. Can you win the turnover battle by 1, hopefully 2, and can you get a special teams flub? Because I think if that happens, you give yourself a shot.
Look at you being the one to bring up special teams.
I need to grasp at any straw I can.
But, that is such a phenomenal point, and I'm usually the one that brings it up, but, like, the Rams special teams have screwed them at times this year, and that is very worth remembering on a nasty day.
And if this is going to be a game where both teams are running the ball and we're limiting possessions, those special teams errors matter more because it's like a more outsized part of the game now. And so there is a way for the Bears to do this. There really is.
A stat that I loved, you won't be surprised to hear the Bears are not very good at defending under center play action.
They're one of the worst teams in the league.
They are one of the worst teams in the league. Their down-to-down success rate is 3rd worst in the NFL. Their EPA per dropback is better than that, because they bounce into interceptions and have goofy shit go their way.
That to me is what needs to happen.
Yes.
You need like a sinking flat defender to get his hand on the ball and tip up an interception because Stafford is trying to fit a ball into a window because you look at the numbers. Stafford this year, 51% of his attempts have gone to the sticks. 51%. That is the highest rate in the league. This team wants to push the ball. Like that's who they want to be. And I think trying to use that against them in the way that the Panthers were able to in both matchups this year, and you can steal back 1 to 2 possessions because of that, I think that has to be part of this.
It's a really cool story that the Bears managed to win last week without the bounces going their way. And
well, the turnovers didn't go their way. I'd say some bounces went their way.
I mean but the turnover bounce, the Watson fumble and the fumbled kickoff and all that type of stuff didn't go their way, but it needs to happen in this game. Like they need to make those plays, or like they won't beat the Rams if they don't win the turnover margin or like have those, the fluky football plays go in their favor. I don't think.
We are in a place where all I can think about is that hope is a dangerous thing.
Would you rather get it out of the way early, or are you happy that it's the last game of the weekend?
Oh, I'd rather get out of the way early. Again, the fact that we have to record and then roll right, or the fact that the game ends, we have to roll right into it. We'll see how that goes. Went okay last time.
I can't wait.
Really looking forward to all of the games this weekend. Again, it is the best football weekend of the year. I could not be more excited. We will be coming your guys' way on Saturday and Sunday night live from this spot right here. So please come back and check things out on Saturday night. For now, that's all we got. Appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Follow the Athletic Football Show wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube.